Hello, everyone. Dr. Nikhil Verma here with another edition of Things I Didn't Learn in Med School. Today's topic is something that's very important, near and dear to my heart, something that I've spoken outwardly about many times, but um, recently there was yet another physician in training that took her own life. The overwhelm of her future, the increasing demands on her time, the pressure from her program, the pressure from the hospital system, the pressure from society. These are just some of the topics that we're going to talk about, but it just got too much for her. And this is such an important topic, and it's should be brought up over and over again. So, and we need to do something about it. It can't just be a topic about awareness. We need to actually make some action and do something about it. So before I go on, I just want to give a little information. Uh, this young resident's name was Jing Mai. She was a resident out in California. Um, she was in her first year of training. So I think I think it's important for everyone to know what her name is if they feel the interest to go research about her and read about her. I think her family and her significant other gave great tributes to her. They also have a GoFundMe page. I will link that in my YouTube channel if you feel so inclined to tribute to this. I think it's an important cause. Um, yeah. So I posted this on my own social media yesterday. Um, Actually, it was brought up to my attention from Dr. Laura Vater, who's a gastrointestinal oncologist. Um, and she's also a writer, cancer prevention, healthy living, et cetera, et cetera. She has 77,000 followers on Twitter, um, so a pretty influential voice in the medical community. She was the one that brought this up, and the one that brought to my attention of one doctor dies a day from suicide. That doesn't even count the doctors that are doing other unhealthy habits to cope with the stresses. Um, 1 in 3 medical students are more likely to experience anxiety than their peers. Um, sorry, 3 times more likely to experience anxiety than their peers. 1/3 of them are more likely to die by suicide than their peers in the future. So, this is a very, very serious topic. It's it's just it's not fair. And it just seems like that the government and hospital administrations and even society is just not doing anything about it. And we talk about mental health being a very prominent reason why things can go wrong, whether that be internally in someone's household or externally to a bigger population. But it seems like nobody wants to do anything about it. They just say, oh, blame it on mental health. But that doesn't seem like it's a solution. Uh, so interestingly, after I posted, retweeted Dr. Vader's, um, or it might be Vater, I don't know. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. Um, I reposted her Instagram post last night, um, and I had a great conversation from a colleague who's in the health and fitness industry, who's a strength coach, physical therapist, Dr. Alex Kovaleski. Um, he was saying, and he's not the type of person like gotcha. He was genuinely asking me, can you give me some insight about why the attitude is so prevalent in medicine? Never experienced it in PT, and I truly can't come to understand how physicians can justify that attitude while giving the opposite advice to their patients all day. Um, and it's a very good, thought-provoking question. I think I've thought of these topics before, but I never sat here and actually dissected them. Um, I think one of the most important things that I want to talk to at the very forefront of it is, you know, yes, we do stress important lifestyle modifications to patients with not only healthy eating and good dietary habits and hygiene and sleep and avoiding drugs and alcohol, and avoiding smoking, et cetera, et cetera. Um, there is something to be said that when these patients are coming to see a physician and they're expecting a solution, and oftentimes are coming with their own other issues, maybe it's mental health, maybe it's financial, maybe it's other issues, and they tend to dump a lot of this information onto their physicians. And most physicians I know, most people in the healthcare industry that I know, have a propensity working towards helping people. And oftentimes, physicians, myself included, will take these burdens and take them upon ourselves to see how we can help out. And now we don't always have a solution for that, but sometimes we still feel that pain that other people are feeling. Um, and this can add hours to your workday. This can add hours to stress, things you bring home from work, um, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and not only those, but in the hospital system, ICU doctors and emergency room doctors, um, and intensive care unit doctors, they tend to have high stress as well because you're dealing with life and death every single day, and that's not a healthy way to look at things. That's not a healthy way to cope if you're just ignoring it. We need to have better solutions for this. And when hospitals and organizations say, oh, you need to do a wellness committee or you need to do wellness modules, mandatory wellness modules, why do that? Uh, Most people will regress away from things that are mandatory, and they'll be more inclined to do things that are spark their interest. So if it was prevalent to them because someone in the hospital system had taken their lives or something like that, instead of forcing a mandatory wellness module, which won't do anything, why don't you do a celebration and memoriam, and then you talk about these things and you help the people that need help, and at those events show them what resources are available. um, Offer them free education but with that, I know everyone enjoys getting a meal out of it and having some de-stress away from work and not having to think about things just even for a little bit, and that's a very healthy way to talk about these things in a good group environment. And it's not just once a day thing, or sorry, once a year thing. This should be at least quarterly, if not monthly. These M&M meetings that we have, morbidity mortality meetings, these fishbone analysis of what happened to all these patients. I think these are great tools to help teach people. But why aren't we talking about these other topics in those meetings? Why aren't we making sure our administration knows? Why aren't we making sure our attendings know? It's these topics are important. We have more and more increased stress daily. So it's not fair for them to stack mandatory activities upon us. And it's not even putting a band-aid on the solution. It is showing the government that, hey, we're doing something about this, even though it's not working. And I'm sure there's statistics out there showing that's not working, just so they don't get in trouble, or just so they can go home and sleep better at night. If there's any hospital administrator out there listening to this and you don't think the bloods of these residents are on your hands, then shame on you. And I will say that proudly and I will not back down from that statement. Stop making us do mandatory wellness modules. They do not help. Fix the problem. So, anyways, going back to what Alex was talking about, I gave him 5 major points, and we're still kind of in a discussion about it, not in a negative way, but in a positive, how can we fix this discussion? I think first and foremost, I think something I didn't learn in med school that we should know is physicians are highly scrutinized if they disclose they have undergone mental illness issues in the past. For example, if you have a history of bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, um, handful of other ones, suicidal ideations, suicidal attempts, and you have gotten treatment for that in the past, and you disclose that to your licensing committee of the state, as we all have to, because there's a question that says, have you ever been diagnosed? Have you ever been treated for, et cetera, et cetera? And we have to disclose that information. After we disclose it, they say, oh, well, we can't deny you your licensure because of that, because that's illegal, which is, minor win. But what they can do is that at any time, the rest of your life, if you undergo mental health wellness, or anything for depression, suicide, even just having a hard time, and they feel like that is interrupting or disrupting or making your patient care less safe, they can revoke your license. And that lays the problem, because now that we know if we need to get help, we can't even openly get it if we want to, because we will be scrutinized heavily by our licensing committees, and potentially get our license taken away. So that causes all types of problems. Another topic similarly to that is when we apply for disability insurance, there is a question about mental health, and you still have to disclose it. And there are policies out there that will not grant you policy if you've ever suffered from depression, anxiety, bipolar, if you've been medicated for it, if you seek treatment in the past for it. So not only would you get your license taken away, but you can't use your disability insurance to pay that gap that other people may be able to get if they weren't in this field. So that's a major issue that needs to be fixed. And this is one of the things that we need to pull together as society and as groups to talk to our representatives and talk to our administration and say, we need to make a change in this, because this is not fair. I think there's nothing healthier in the world to admit when you're having a problem and going to get the help that you need, getting compensation if you need time off for it. Because on the back end, what are people doing? They're resorting to drugs and alcohol, anxiety, sleepless nights, and you're telling me that you would rather have them do an operation on you, you'd rather have them treat your loved ones, than actually saying, this physician took the time to realize that their mental health is important because they can help more people when they're mentally prepared, than a surgeon who was up for 48 hours straight based off of anxiety because they lost a patient, unfortunately, 2 days ago. You tell me which one's healthier. You tell me which one's right. The second topic I was talking about is the stigmatization from society, how they will view you as a physician. If someone goes out there and says, yeah, I have bipolar disorder, or I'm depressed, I have anxiety, I have schizophrenia that's controlled with my medications and therapy. If you have any of these things and the governing board, for whatever reason, blows it by, there's still a stigmatization from society. I mean, I can say honestly that I know loved ones that would probably not go to a physician based on that information alone. And that shouldn't be a thing, because if you're properly medicated, going through the right therapies, if it's well controlled, then I don't see how it's a harmful way to help more people. I think there's still a stigma in the world about these mental health disorders, and I think we're still on the forefront of discovering what they actually mean and where they come from and how they affect day-to-day life. But I still think it's important for us as a society not to buy into this person's less because they have this depression, anxiety, bipolar. if anything, these topics can make an individual way more insightful in who they are as an individual and how they are represented in society. And oftentimes they will use that to better themselves. Um, it's a defense mechanism. Quite often it's because I never felt good enough. I'm gonna want to use this as my tool to be the best that I can be to help as many people as I can. Or my anxiety keeps me up at night, but instead of just worrying all the time, I use that to study and redo things in my head that I can potentially make a better outcome in the future. Um, People that are suffering from depression tend to be very insightful, and they kind of know where their head's at and where they're at in the world, and they can often really say when they can help out and when they can show up in the world and when they're struggling. So these aren't all negatives, and oftentimes these people can connect very closely to patients and their struggles and what they're going on, what's going on with them. So that was the second major point that I brought up with Alex. The third point was it's a system problem. Between medical school, getting into medical school, so undergrad, pre-med, getting MCATs, the medical school admissions testing, getting into medical school, 4 years of medical school, which is absolutely grueling, then applying for a residency, getting into a residency, and succeeding in residency. And then similarly, if you were trying to go to a fellowship or even just getting a job in an area you like with the people where you want to live, these are all topics. So, we have, and most of these kids are starting in high school now, really putting the stress on themselves. So, from ages 14 to 16, so we have 4 years of high school, 3 to 4 years, 5 years of undergrad that are building up anxiety and thoughts and getting pressure from family members and lecturers and professors and all the like. And then once you get into medical school, the work just gets harder. You sleep a lot less. The book work becomes a lot more heavy. Then you start dealing with patient care, and you're afraid to be wrong. You're afraid to do anything incorrectly. And then you get into residency, and if you're especially trying to start a family at this time, or buy a house or whatever, forget about sleep. You're sleeping 4 to 6 hours a night if you're lucky. If you're on call, good luck getting sleep. We have presentations we have to do that are forced upon us by the ACGME. We have projects that are forced upon us from our hospital systems. You have to do X amount of hours volunteering. You have to do X amount of hours researching. You have to do X amount of hours presenting. And then on top of all of it, you still have to go live your normal life. Those bills at home are still racking up. You have dry cleaning that's been overdue. You have laundry that's overdue. You have, that light that's broken, air conditioning that doesn't work, and you're not home to deal with those things. And you can't take days off. No, you can't do that to fix whatever's going on. Because not only are you putting more stress on your colleagues, it makes you feel guilty as an individual, but the hospital will almost get upset with you. I should pause there and say that this isn't every hospital system, but there are plenty out there that are like this. And I felt that heavily when I was in residency. Every day that I took off, I felt guilty. Even if I needed it. Even if it was my assigned day off. If I still got phone calls and texts from the nurses, and them not even knowing that was my day off. You redirect politely, but what can you do in those situations? So with all of this, we also got to think about the loans that are built up. So a lot of people are like, oh, you're a physician, your loans won't matter. It's like, I'm not the one I'm worried about. I'll figure this out. But the thing is these loans put a massive stress on us as individuals. we know student loans are the one thing that can never be forgiven. Even if you die, unfortunately, these things get passed on to family members. Um, versus other bankruptcy loans and other types of loans out there. Um, so these loans is an overhanging, I don't know, anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s a month of overhead. So you've already lost most of your earning years from right out of college to the age of, we'll say around 30, 31, 32. Um, and when I say your earning years, I mean this. My colleagues that were my friends in high school and college, they were right out of college, they went to get jobs. Maybe they liked the job, maybe they didn't, but they made cash flow. They were able to put that cash flow back into the loans. They were able to invest. They were able to do other things, get promotions over the next few years. So by the time that they hit 30, they already have like a decade of work under their belts, almost. At least 6 years, 8 years, whatever. So they're experienced in the world, they're ready for promotions, they're ready for the next step, they know how to invest, they know how to handle money better. Versus physicians, we don't get that training in in high school, in pre-med years, in med school, and residency. So we're already behind financially because we have bigger loans because we had to. We get paid almost nothing as residents. And on the back end, we don't have the education house. So, to catch up, you're like, oh, you'll be making more money than us. But yes, but it's going to take us a few years to catch up either way. But the point is that I'm trying to make with all of this is, and my good friend Justin Harvey was talking about this on his podcast, is that, is it worth that? Even that 1 year of fellowship could cost you $1.2 million in future potential earnings, because every money amount of dollar that you invest early in your career, the higher ROI it is with compounding interest. So the more you put in when you're younger, versus you can put in hundreds of thousands of dollars 10 years later, and you still will never catch up if this person put in consistently a few $1,000s a year. So when you think about these things, and we have these heavier loans on physicians than other individuals, it adds up, and that's more stress. And then on top of that, we have to worry about malpractice. Everything has to go perfect for every single patient. If it doesn't, we have this overlying fear for up to 10 or 20 years that we did something wrong one day, and they're going to audit your charts, and they're going to take you to court and try to sue you, even though your best intentions were there and you try to do the best thing, and sometimes things go unfortunately wrong. So that's another topic. I think about that heavily when you do everything, but these are other topics that society doesn't have to deal with, that physicians and people in the healthcare industry do. I think the next important topic is that mental health is not being covered. It's not adequately covered for the nation in general, but specifically for residents, physicians, and such. No one's going to allow you to take time off for mental health wellness, or if you're just having an off day and you need to go talk to someone and like, hey, I really need this day to go straighten my life out. Like, this is crucial for a better healthy lifestyle, but we don't do it. We don't allow it. I think my colleague Darsh Shah, who's a PM&R resident, he had a great recommendation of make these health and wellness things mandatory for residents, even if they don't want to talk. Even health and medical students, even if they don't want to talk. Actually, just everyone in the hospital, even if they don't want to talk. That hour is set aside, half an hour, whatever you want to do, for these people, with a trained counselor to sit there and talk through some of their issues they've been experiencing through the month. It doesn't have to be weekly. Weekly would be ideal, but monthly would be fine. And then also put on group meetings where individuals can sit around in a setting, a controlled setting, and talk about their feelings and talk about life and get individuals through these barriers. And make these things affordable. Make health insurance, give money to these. Thankfully, my intern year, one of my health insurance did cover these services, so it was great to get those services paid for. Um, and it was very important for me at that time of my life, and I think it's still important for me. I haven't gone consistently, but if things are coming up in my life that I feel like I can't handle, then I go and talk to someone about it for a few months, um, and it gets me through. But I think the stigmatization and the bottling up that we do is just such a way that we do it in society that we expect our physicians to be like, and it shouldn't be like that. And that brings me to my last point: is just the poor coping mechanisms. Um, I don't have the direct numbers in front of me, but the statistics that a highly stressed individual are likely to, in the medical field, are likely to die more prematurely from heart-related issues because they have higher blood pressure, type A personalities, if you've heard that, um, higher degrees of alcohol abuse, higher degrees of drug abuse, higher degrees of sexual addiction, and porn abuse, um, and other poor coping mechanisms. Um, and I'm not saying the only coping mechanism is to go talk to someone, but it is valuable to find the ones that work. Uh, some things that I also find that help me a lot: breathing exercises, sometimes even going as far as paying for apps that will take me through some breathing meditations. Meditation itself, which can be separate from, deliberate breathing techniques. Um, Reading books about psychology and spirituality. Um, Religion tends to have a high correlation with happiness in certain areas because there's a sense of community, there's a sense of purpose, um, and then everything else that's revolving around that. Um, so those are two other things. If we can find purpose in this life, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning really drives this point home. Is anyone that thought, oh, I'm gonna get out of here fine, wasn't being realistic. But the people that thought like this is hard and I'm gonna get through it, those are the ones that tended to survive. Um, I have a purpose on the other side of all this, and I'm gonna keep working, not just hoping one day things will be better. And that's something I have to constantly remind myself that the work that you're doing is important. Um, I talked about therapy, group, and individualized. I think learning about philosophy and reading into other physicians' stories. There's some great books out there. I reread When Breath Becomes Air almost yearly, and it always brings my eyes to why I'm doing this in the first place. Um, Spending more time with friends and family and not always constant worrying about work. I am the king at making this problematic for myself. Um, Even if I'm sitting at home for 10 minutes doing nothing, I still think about work. I still want to open up my laptop and check my emails and check my patient charts and make sure everything's squared away. It's tough for me, and I'm still working on it. But I'm learning, and I think that's a big thing that we're continuously learning. Um, and the last major point is, uh, I think the most important thing is, if you're out there and if you're struggling, or if you know someone that is struggling, that you should take the time to reach out to them and talk to them and be present when you're talking to them. Encourage them to get help. Encourage yourself to get help. And know that it's okay to get the help. And know that it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay that you're going through these feelings. It's part of the human emotion. It's part of the human experience. It's one of those things that the more and more I talk about, the more and more I'm like, maybe this is something that I need to tell myself more. And it's hard. But the point is that I'm not alone. You're not alone. We need to take care of ourselves so we can help more people. But we also need to make change in the whole infrastructure of the entire thing. Um, it's time that we do something more drastic. And I don't know what that is. Hopefully, someone out there does. And hopefully, out there, that this helps someone out there. And this gave someone some new insight on life. And um, just know that there's a group of physicians, there's a community out there that are here to help support you. And we want to help you in any way we can because every life is too precious. Um, I keep going back to Jing Mai and how she was on the first step after her warm up laps, considering undergrad and medical school as the warm up laps of life. And she was just about to embark in this beautiful career. You can tell by the pictures that her boyfriend or significant other, Justi Tang, posted how much enthusiasm she had for life and travel and how much she cared. Um, and she could help so many people. And we can all help so many people if we can just get out of our own ways and help ourselves. And this is by no means trying to be harsh on the decision she made. This is more coming out of passion that it's more important for me to get on a phone call with a friend and talk to them for an hour than go to their funeral. And I think we all need to do a better job at it. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Hope you guys found this useful. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them for me. And if you have interest in donating to Jing Mai's GoFundMe account, again, I'll drop it in the YouTube link. Um, I'll also link other individuals I talked to about in this video if you have more interest in what they have to say. But anyways, everyone, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.